Welcome to the Tech 1-2 podcast. So excited today to have a very special guest in the studio, Matt Palmer, Operations Manager here at Empist. Welcome, man.
Thank you, John. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. I'm glad you're in the studio today because we're going to talk about a very important topic today about Windows 10, end of life, and why it's important to businesses, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. So let's get started. So talking a little bit about Windows 10, what are some things that businesses really need to be looking at or be concerned about? Because we hear this end of life, but what does it really mean?
Well, John, end of life doesn't necessarily mean end of functioning, right? As far as your PCs, your desktops, your laptops that are running Windows 10, you'll still be able to use them, right? But following that end of life date, Microsoft will no longer release security patches for those systems. Therefore, those systems become very vulnerable. And as time goes on, they increasingly become more vulnerable due to lack of security patching.
So the business is still going to be able to use the computer. You're saying that it just won't get updates?
Correct. They could still use the computer. However, from a security perspective, very high risk. You do not want to be using an operating system that is not receiving security patches. Vulnerabilities come
Absolutely.
out every day, right? And just because Windows 10 is going end of life, people are moving to Windows 11, attackers are still going to be targeting Windows 10 and seeking vulnerabilities to exploit over time. So as time goes on, those vulnerabilities will continue to increase. So it's very important that we're cognizant of the end-of-life date and preparing to migrate our systems to supported versions, Windows 11.
Okay, so the end-of-life date is, just so we get this penciled in, October 14th, 2025.
Correct.
So at the time of this recording, we're in May of 2025. So we've got about 5 months to take care of this for businesses. And we would absolutely recommend, our customers to upgrade to the, whether it's Windows 11 or if there's a different architecture that they're looking to consider, but to address this prior to that date. Wouldn't you say those are conversations that you're having with customers?
Absolutely. Yeah, these are conversations we've been having since, the end of last year, with our teams preparing for this, understanding, our client environments, and seeing where things are at, and then starting to plan with those customers these upgrades.
So they have 5 months from now. If planning has not already started or business hasn't already started, it's game time. They have to do something.
Yes, it is game time. Like right now is prime time. We got 5 months. There's plenty of time. We do not want to be getting closer to that end of life date without a plan. And these are conversations that we're having. In many cases, a lot of customers have already made the updates and upgrades.
So what are some of the considerations that we really need to look at? A lot of businesses today, many feel like, hey, we just upgraded our systems. Like we just went to Windows 10. Now we're talking about Windows 11. Believe it or not, Windows 10 is 10 years old. A lot of businesses who maybe even delayed a process of getting from, Windows 7 to Windows 8 to 8.1 to 10, and now we're talking about 11. They feel like, hey, we just got our new systems and they have Windows 10 on them. Why do we need to upgrade if we're already on a system that's already functioning for us? You mentioned the security, but what are some real world examples of attacks that have happened from companies who have not performed the upgrades?
That's a great question. And if you recall, I think a lot of people will remember WannaCry.
Yeah.
Very large ransomware attack. And really it targeted a lot of machines where, businesses were still running XP, right? Vista, Windows 8. For supported versions, Microsoft had released patches that would have protected you. In this case, a lot of businesses who delayed that update to the newer operating systems, they were sitting ducks. And we saw that across the landscape. A lot of businesses were ransomwared, their files were encrypted, and they had a difficult choice to make to rectify that situation.
Yeah, so when we say that security updates won't be available, and we look at, let's fast forward to October 14, 2025, computers, they're still operating. It's not like they're just going to shut down. This isn't a Y2K type scare where companies thought that their computers would just stop working. The computer will continue to operate. But you mentioned something that's very important, that security update not being available. If I'm a bad actor, let's put a bad actor hat on, and I know that a computer, which is used by the majority of population today, over 50% of computers out there are still running Windows 10, and I'm a bad actor, well, isn't that like a honeypot for me? Like, this is just a great opportunity. I can create an exploit. I can exploit Windows 10 and know that the manufacturer is not going to release a security update to that. So that's a significant risk to a business by not upgrading, wouldn't you say?
Very significant. And you can guarantee the bad actors are licking their chops, so
Yeah,
to
they're just
speak,
waiting.
waiting
Yeah.
for this, right? Like they're like, I can't wait because they're going to exploit, exploit, exploit. And like I said, as time goes on, it's only going to get worse if you delay.
Yeah, and okay, so they companies may be looking at, well, how do I even get started? I haven't even considered a Windows 10 upgrade or Windows 11 upgrade from Windows 10, but there are some options. So if a company has supported hardware, they have fairly current equipment, Windows 11 might be a free upgrade for them, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and that's how it works, right? If you're running on a system on Windows 10 and it's supported hardware, it can do the upgrade to Windows 11. Um, that license works, so you can actually just in-place upgrade. In many cases, that's how we're proceeding. But there are some considerations as far as if you're just thinking about this now, you're like, what do I do? The first things first, we need to do an assessment, right? We need to see what you have out there. How many machines are Windows 10? Are they supported as far as hardware goes to upgrade to Windows 11? Are they under warranty as well, right? And then there's some decisions that need to be made. What will we be in place upgrading? What do we need to actually replace as far as the physical system, right? So in some cases, you may have machines that can't do the upgrade. So we need to consider, okay, we're going to have to procure some new machines and set those up prior to the end of life date. So that's why it's important 5 months in advance. We're talking right now. There's plenty of time to get this done, but you want to act now if you haven't.
Yeah, because if you haven't, even if you have the in-place upgrade and your computer, your system, the hardware itself does support it, one of the considerations is going to be the applications.
Exactly.
Now, your applications that you have on those machines, again, hardware can support the in-place upgrade, but it's best to test and ensure that everything is operating correctly. So doing it in a phased approach is probably a good option.
Absolutely, yes. And when you think about legacy applications, in some cases vendors are not upgrading to be able to have this application be supported on a newer operating system, right? And so, if you're a business and you're running on legacy applications, this is something that needs to be considered, and that's why you want to do a phased approach when you're starting to test these upgrades, right? You're going to do a pilot. You want to identify, power users in different key business units in the organization to make sure we're capturing that wide net of all these applications being tested on the new operating system, understanding the compatibility or issues that arise, so those can be addressed and attacked prior to end of life date.
Yeah. So to be clear, so the Windows 10 to Windows 11, as far as from a user perspective as well, it's quite different.
Somewhat, right? I mean, I don't think it's going to be as drastic as a shift, like when we went from, Windows XP to Windows 7, right? The interface was very different, and I know that's very challenging. And there are some tweaks, right, when you upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 as far as, the user looking at it for the first time and trying to navigate. But I do believe it's pretty intuitive if you've been using Windows 10. And, that's where our team comes in as well, right, as far as assisting the user base, creating some documentation, and assisting those users when they're signing in for the first time, answering questions, and being really engaged with their teams to ensure that the user base understands how to use the new laptop or the upgraded laptop, knows where their files are, knows how to access their apps, knows hey, where was that shortcut at, right? So there's going to be some fine tuning and tweaking, but ultimately I think it's a pretty intuitive leap, right? It's not like something brand new that you've never seen before.
Yeah, it's not changing the architecture entirely, like going from Windows to Linux.
Correct.
Which there are some, if you look at some of the forums out there that, some of the open source community is really trying to make a push for this, and we love certain open source technologies as well, but we're moving from, don't consider going to Windows 11, but consider going from Windows 10 to Linux. Now that would be a big change.
Yeah, that would be drastic. And there's other options too, right? There may be some businesses that are looking, to virtualize more, right? And perhaps they're looking at other options like, Azure Virtual
Oh,
Desktop,
sure, like
or
an AVD.
yeah, or Citrix or other solutions that would ensure that they're security minded still, and perhaps they're just not using those physical Windows 11 devices, and they're protected through that virtualization when they're
Yeah.
connecting in.
So if a business were to consider some sort of virtual environment like that, like an AVD, and are considering, well, my computers currently don't support Windows 11. They've checked and they don't support it, and they don't want to make that capital expenditure. Isn't it still important though that, and they say, well, we're going to keep these Windows 10 devices as our essential gateway into an AVD environment? Isn't it still important that the systems that they're using to connect into that AVD are still fully supported and on a current version of an operating system?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because ultimately, if there's a vulnerability that could be exploited, it could lead to exploitation, of your virtual connection, whether you're going to AVD or another solution.
And history has proved itself that these vulnerabilities will be exploited post the October date.
You can guarantee it.
Yeah, that's going to happen. So if a business now, let's say perhaps they're in manufacturing, they have some legacy applications that are currently only supported on Windows 10, and making a shift to a Windows 11 is just not an option from a business perspective. It's not an option for them. They have compatibility issues. They have to rewrite programs, whatever that might be. If a business is unable to migrate to Windows 11, what are some options?
Well, Microsoft does have an option where they will basically continue to security patch those Windows 10 devices for up to a year, right? This is something you have to sign up for and you have to pay for. So this is an option for businesses that are really stuck. Like we cannot do an upgrade right now. We can't have our developers update our applications fast enough. We're in a pinch, right?
Yeah.
So part of your strategic plan for that is you could potentially extend for the year with Microsoft to continue to get security updates. But you have to understand that over that timeline, we do have to do something. You're going to have to make a shift, whether it's to a new vendor and application, whether it's in-house and you need your developers to upgrade. That does need to happen as part of your strategic plan. And ideally, that's not the route we want businesses to go, right? We'd like everything to be in place prior to end of life, but I do understand circumstances, and this is an option for businesses if they are in a pinch, need to extend for a little while to continue their strategic plan to move these applications where they can be supported.
And that's just from a security perspective. So that's also known as ESU, the Extended Security Updates,
Correct.
Which is available to business and home users for a cost. So if they're in that situation and they have no other option, that's kind of the last resort for us. That would be a
Correct, yeah.
recommendation for last resort. Our stance is let's get your systems on current supported operating system and applications so that we can avoid and mitigate the risk and reduce the risk of any type of security incident within the organization. So we look at this shouldn't be a surprise to companies, though. We talk a little bit about lifecycle management. We talk about, well, when you procure those systems, you look at lifecycle management. What does this mean? Well, oftentimes lifecycle management will align with whatever the depreciation schedule is that a business has on equipment. So, for example, if a business is on a 3-year depreciation schedule, then we'll recommend, well, let's replace computers, perhaps a third of them every year, so then you have current and updated equipment, and then your systems can support these upgrades that are coming out, and when things go end of life, you have more current equipment. Now, if you have very aged equipment, it's very likely that your systems can't support that. And even if they can, at some point, they're just going to be so degraded. If you have equipment that's very old, even if it checks the box, yes, this is Windows 11 compatible, but you're still running on a spinning disk, not on an SSD, the experience for the user is going to be very poor. So the reason I just mentioned lifecycle management, even if a business can be supported, the Windows 11 upgrade can be supported as an in-place upgrade, it still needs to be evaluated. And if it needs to be evaluated and deemed that a computer needs to be replaced and you don't have a lifecycle management policy in place today, it might be the start of doing so that you can avoid situations like this again in the future.
Exactly. Yeah, this is the perfect opportunity if you don't have lifecycle management right now for your hardware to put that in place. And that's something obviously we're helping customers with as we're doing these upgrades. But yes, it's critical. And, we've seen right across the landscape, businesses that do already have that life cycle management in place. In a lot of cases, we're doing a third, like you said, every year, right? Upgrading or replacing. A lot of businesses already are, maybe 50% Windows 11, right? And so again, that's a good litmus test and proof of concept, as well as, hey, your landscape, your environment, your applications are compatible, right? And that again makes it even easier as far as the planning for the rest of the upgrades. But like you said, if you have some older hardware, maybe it checks the box, but your performance is only going to continue to degrade. So, in some cases you may say, hey, it checks the box. Is it still under warranty? Maybe a decision needs to be made to just let's get a new machine.
Yeah, especially when you look at the machine, and my philosophy and my belief is, and I believe many of our audience will probably agree, but the value of equipment, the value of of the equipment that you're using isn't the equipment itself; it's the person using that, and that's where you see the big value. So if you're investing in some sort of equipment, and again, it's a depreciating asset, it's considered a commodity, the value that business is getting is from the person who's using it. So now if their production has decreased by even 5%, 10%, because the system is just performing very slowly, and now tasks that would normally take them 15 minutes are taking them 30 minutes, well, you have to consider that as well.
Absolutely.
So, well, absolutely. Even just, we talk about Section 179, just some tax benefits. And, even if it does come down to needing to replace your fleet of equipment, whether that's replacing 10 computers, 20, 50, 100, 1,000, whatever that might be, there still could be some tax benefits by doing something with capital expenditures this year. But also, one thing that we've seen is there's also leasing options that companies can do, where these leasing companies understand as well that, there's this Windows 11, Windows 10 end of life, Windows 11 upgrades that needs to happen. So this is an opportunity where they've created some special incentives and programs to get, with very low rates, low interest, to get customers to be able to replace their fleet and upgrade their fleet, given the fact that October 14th is right around the corner.
Yes, yes. And, as far as lifecycle management goes, that may be a lucrative option for some businesses. It kind of takes care of it for you, right? You're getting this fresh batch, you have this many years, and then you're replacing them, right? And you're getting brand new ones. So it kind of takes some of the guesswork and maintenance and management out of it for you, right? And it's in place, right? You have your timeline, when you're swapping to the new machine. So, yes, and we've seen that with different customers. It's been very beneficial as far as the Windows 11 upgrade process goes.
Yeah. So let's say you're speaking with somebody and they're like, "Man, I'm living on the edge. Like I'm not going to upgrade. I'm gonna hold out, and I don't care about these security updates. Nobody's coming after me." At some point, those applications that they're using, those manufacturers of those applications and developers will eventually stop supporting the older operating system as well, because it costs the software developers of whatever application money to support older operating systems. So what's your take on that?
I mean, you're absolutely right. You can try to be a rebel and say, hey, I'm not worried about this, but eventually it's going to come to roost in the form of your environment is now exposed, you've been ransomwared, or all of a sudden your application stopped working, and now you're in a very difficult position as a business. You can't produce, you can't operate, and now you're going to have to rush and scramble to try to rectify the situation. When we're talking 5 months in advance, this is a perfect time to start planning now. You don't want to be that person 12 months from now who's ransomwared and trying to figure out how am I going to get my files back, how am I going to afford to pay the ransom. Hopefully, and that's why it's important businesses have backups as well, obviously. But, if you're a rebel, that's something to think about as well. Do you have good backups that are protected, that also are not vulnerable? Right?
Yeah. Well, and then we can go down the path there. I mean, the impact to an organization, it's not just the backups, being able to restore, but the disruption in business should something happen.
Yeah, how much does an hour of disruption to your business cost?
That's significant. I mean, when you really sit down and look at it and you take in all your costs associated, and to think that something could have been prevented like this, again, in October, November, before the end of the year, we'll see some major attack that takes place.
Yes.
And when there's forensics or when there's an analysis done on that, it's going to be determined that, yes, it exposed Windows 10 or legacy devices even beyond older than Windows 10. That, again, they're just waiting. There's exploits that exist in these operating systems today that have not been made publicly available. There is no POC on it yet, proof of concept, and publicly available. But eventually, these things exist. It's not like they're just going to be created. They're shipped. These operating systems are shipped. They're installed on your laptops, on your desktops, on all your endpoints. And unless you have Windows updates that handling the security updates, you're leaving yourself very much exposed.
Correct. Yeah, and that you got to think about it. Obviously it's an investment, right? It feels like it's an investment up front, but that investment is worthwhile because think about what happens after, right? The investment now to protect yourself versus now your business is hard down. Not maybe for an hour. It could be for longer. It could be for days.
Yeah.
It could be for weeks. We've seen this before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a scary position to be in, and you don't want to be kicking yourself, a year down the road going, I wish I would have just, taken that more seriously and planned ahead. And now I'm in a situation where my business can't operate.
Yeah, and if they do upgrade and replace, it's a great way to refresh their systems, and it could be a great benefit to the organization and to the staff. Look, we're refreshing. You're getting brand new systems. You're getting new devices. We're investing into the organization, and that is an opportunity. Just from that alone, could be an opportunity where that can just trigger a business owner or whoever's in purchasing. Yeah, it's time. We need to upgrade. We've been, we're at 7 or 10 years aging on this equipment. Windows 10 was great for us. It did a lot of great things for our business, but now it's time that we really need to just buckle down and bite the bullet and make the purchase and investment into the business. So from a staff perspective, it could be very refreshing that they just got new systems.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate having you in the studio today. Any closing remarks for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, in closing, right, guys, I think it's really important that you're cognizant of the end-of-life date coming up for Windows 10. It's important that you think about the ramifications for your business, and that if you haven't started thinking about it, you're starting to think about it. You're talking, with your IT teams, your providers, and getting those discussions going to strategize and plan ahead and position yourself properly for your environment to be safe and secure come end of life.
Well, awesome. Thanks, Matt, very much for being here today. To the audience, thank you for tuning in to End of an Era, Windows 10 coming end of life. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and see you next time.